The world remembers sunrises as beginnings. Poets have written odes to their promise. Painters have captured their golden hope on canvas. Lovers have whispered their dreams beneath their awakening light. But I know differently now. I know that sunrises can also be endings. Absolute, irrevocable, devastating endings that arrive not with the violence of storm or sword, but with the gentle cruelty of dawn's first light. My name is Thomas Crane, and I killed the woman I loved by simply watching the sunrise. But let me start where all great tragedies begin, not with the ending, but with the moment when everything still seemed possible, when ignorance was still bliss, and when the night held promises instead of lies.
It was autumn when I first saw her, that peculiar season when the world itself seems caught between living and dying, when leaves turn to flame before surrendering to earth, when the air carries both warmth and warning. I was 26 then, a photographer by trade and a wanderer by nature, traveling through the Carpathian Mountains with nothing but a backpack full of equipment and a head full of romantic notions about capturing the soul of Eastern Europe through my lens. The village of Sungors was barely a mark on any modern map, a collection of stone houses and wooden churches clinging to the mountainside like barnacles to a ship's hull, populated by perhaps 300 souls who seemed to exist in a time before smartphones and satellites. The locals spoke a dialect of Romanian so old and thick that my phrasebook was nearly useless. But their hospitality needed no translation. They fed me, sheltered me, and warned me, though I didn't understand the warnings then about the old manor house on the hill. "No merge acolo după Antaneric," the innkeeper's wife told me, her weathered face grave with concern. "Nimic bun nu vine de la acel loc." Don't go there after dark. Nothing good comes from that place. But photographers are drawn to forbidden places like moths to flame, and the manor house on the hill was irresistible. It stood alone against the...
I was in what must have been a grand ballroom once, photographing a massive chandelier that still hung from the ceiling despite decades of abandonment when I heard the voice. "You have a good eye for beauty." I spun around, heart hammering, and saw her for the first time. She stood in the doorway like an apparition, so perfectly framed by the crumbling architecture that for a moment I thought she must be a trick of the fading light, a ghost conjured by my photographer's imagination. She wore a dress of deep burgundy velvet that seemed to absorb what little light remained. Her skin was pale as moonstone, and her hair fell in waves of midnight black down to her waist. But it was her eyes that captured me, enormous eyes of violet gray that seemed to hold centuries of sorrow and secrets. "I didn't mean to trespass," I managed to say, my voice embarrassingly unsteady. "I am a photographer. I was just capturing beauty before it disappears completely," she finished, moving into the room with a grace that seemed to almost be floating.
I'm Thomas, I said, extending my hand. She looked at my hand for a long moment, something complicated passing across her features. Hesitation, longing, sadness, before she finally took it. Her touch was cool, her fingers delicate, and the contact sent something electric through my entire body. "Ilara," she said softly. "My name is Ilara." That night we talked until the moon rose high and full above the broken towers. She showed me through the manor, telling me stories of what each room had been, who had walked these halls, what grand parties had filled these spaces with music and laughter centuries ago. She spoke of the past with the vivid detail of someone who had lived it, and I was too enchanted to question how she knew so much, too captivated by her beauty and intelligence to wonder why she was here alone in this abandoned place. When I finally left, stumbling back down the hill to the village in the deep hours of night,
I was already lost. I had fallen in love in a single evening. Fallen as completely and helplessly as a man stepping off a cliff. And I had no idea I was already plummeting toward the ground.
I returned the next day, and the day after that, and every day for 3 weeks. Each time, I arrived before sunset and left after dark. Our meetings governed by an unspoken rule that I didn't understand, but instinctually followed. Ilara never explained why she never met me in daylight, and I never asked. Too grateful for whatever time I could have with her to risk questions that might spoil the magic. We fell into a pattern, a routine that felt both ancient and new. I would bring food from the village, bread and cheese, fruit and wine, and she would nibble at it politely, though I noticed she never seemed to eat much. We would walk through the ruins and the surrounding forest. She would tell me stories of the past, and I would photograph everything. The manor, the landscape, but mostly her. My camera's memory card filled with images of Ilara, standing in doorways, sitting on stone walls, moving through shafts of moonlight like a dancer at a dream. She was the most photogenic subject I had ever encountered, but there was something strange about the images. In person, she was animated, expressive, fully alive. But in photographs, she appeared almost ethereal. So the camera was capturing not a woman, but...
"Perhaps you were searching for this," she said one night, her hand finding mine as we sat on a balcony overlooking the forest. "For a place out of time, for a connection beyond the ordinary." "Perhaps I was searching for you," I said, and meant it with an intensity that surprised us both. She turned to me then, her violet-gray eyes shimmering with unshed tears, her expression a mixture of joy and agony that I didn't understand. "Thomas, you shouldn't love me. You don't know what I am. You don't know what loving me will cost you." "I don't care," I said, young and foolish and certain of my invincibility, the way only those who have never truly lost anything can be. "Whatever you are, whatever complications exist, I don't care. I've never felt this way before. I've never connected with anyone like this." "That's because you've never met anyone like me," she said, her voice breaking. "No one has for a very long time." She kissed me then, and it was like kissing moonlight made flesh, cool and soft and achingly beautiful. I pulled her closer, feeling the press of her body against mine, and for just a moment I felt something else, the faintest flutter beneath her ribs, not quite a heartbeat, but something similar, something weak and irregular and wrong. But then she deepened the kiss, and I forgot about everything except the taste of her lips, the scent of her skin like night-blooming jasmine, the way she trembled in my arms, as though she was the fragile one, as though I was the dangerous one, as though this moment was both salvation and damnation for us both.
It was the innkeeper's wife who finally told me the truth, though even she couldn't bring herself to speak it directly. I had been in Sangyurs for nearly a month, and the locals had noticed my nightly pilgrimages to Kasanapti. Their hospitality had grown strained, their smiles forced, their warnings more urgent. Finally, one morning over breakfast, the innkeeper's wife sat down across from me with the gravity of someone preparing to deliver terrible news. "Tanush," she said, "young man. Shti Chayastaya, do you know what she is?" "Her name is Ilara," I said defensively. "She's Strigoi," the old woman interrupted, and the word fell between us like a stone into still water. I knew the word. Every horror fan knows the word. Strigoi, the Romanian vampire, the undead, the creature that exists between life and death, sustained by the blood of the living. But knowing the word from movies and folklore is different from hearing it spoken with utter conviction. from seeing the fear and pity in an old woman's eyes as she looks at you like you're already dead. That's ridiculous, I said, but my voice was weak. Vampires aren't real, they're just things.
De 300 anni, the woman continued relentlessly. 300 years. 300 years she has existed in that house. We know this. Our grandparents knew this. Their grandparents knew this. She does not age. She does not walk in sunlight. She does not eat food. And those who love her, she paused, her eyes welling with tears. Those who love her always die. You're wrong, I said, standing up so quickly my chair fell backward. You don't know her. She is not a monster. She is not... But I was already running from the inn, from the old woman's words, from the truth I had been deliberately avoiding since that first night in the ballroom. I ran through the village and up the hill, arriving at Casa Nopzi just as the sun was beginning to set, and I pounded on the massive old doors until my fists were bruised. Elara opened the door, and one look at my face told her everything. You know, she said softly. Not a question. A statement of fact. Tell me it's not true, I demanded, grabbing her shoulders, needing physical contact to anchor me to reality. Tell me that you're not what they say you are. She looked at me for a long moment, and I watched her face cycle through a dozen different expressions: denial, defiance, resignation, sorrow, before settling on something that looked almost like relief. Come inside. The sun is setting. I'll tell you everything.
We sat in the ballroom where we'd first met, moonlight streaming through broken windows, and Elara told me her story in a voice that was both ancient and young, weary and urgent, resigned and desperate. She had been born in 1722, the daughter of a Romanian nobleman and his French wife, raised in privilege and beauty in this very manor house. She had been educated, cultured, promised to a prince, destined for a life of wealth and status. But then, in her 20th year, she had been attacked by a creature in the forest, a strigoi, an undead thing that had drained her blood and left her to die. But she hadn't died. Not completely. She had transformed instead, becoming something between human and monster, caught in an eternal twilight of existence, where she was neither fully alive nor fully dead. Her family, horrified by what she had become, had locked her in the manor and...
The wings in the thumbnail, I said, suddenly understanding. You have when I'm weak, when I'm dying. The transformation is incomplete, she explained. The demonic aspects emerge. Wings, claws. The face of what I truly am beneath this human shell. It's hideous. You could never be hideous to me, I interrupted. Elara, I don't care what you are. I love you. We can figure this out. There must be a way to... To what? She asked, her voice breaking. To cure me? There is no cure, Thomas. To keep me alive? Only blood keeps me alive. Human blood, freely given or violently taken. To run away together? I cannot leave. We held each other in the moonlight, and I felt her cool tears on my neck, and I made a decision that I thought was noble, romantic, tragic, in all the best ways. I made a decision without fully understanding what I was deciding. Then turn me, I said. Make me like you. Make me immortal. We can be together forever. She pulled back, horror on her face. No, never. I would never curse someone I love with this existence. I would never create another monster. Then what do we do? I asked, desperate. Just give up? Just say goodbye and walk away? I don't know, she whispered.
For 300 years, I've existed without hope. And then you arrived. You with your camera and your dreams and your beautiful mortal life. And suddenly, I remembered what hope felt like. But hope is the cruelest curse of all, Thomas. Hope makes you believe impossible things might be possible. We made love that night, there in the ballroom under the broken chandelier, on blankets spread over marble floors, with moonlight painting our skin in shades of silver and shadow. She was cool to the touch, but not cold, gentle but not fragile, and in her arms I understood what all the poets had been trying to say.
We spent 6 more weeks together, and they were the most beautiful and most terrible weeks of my life. I moved out of the inn and into the manor, bringing my belongings up the hill despite the villagers' protests and dire warnings. During the days, I slept in her arms, in the sealed darkness of her chamber, a windowless room deep in the manor's heart, where not even the smallest shaft of sunlight could penetrate. At night, we explored her prison together, the forest that surrounded the manor, the ruins of an old monastery higher in the mountains, the hidden caves where underground springs sang songs only the darkness could hear. She fed from me every few nights, and each time I watched her become more vital, more present, more achingly beautiful. My blood, given willingly and in love, was more powerful than any animal blood could ever be. It was healing her, strengthening her, making her transformation more complete. But it was also changing me. I grew pale, tired, distant from my own mortality. I stopped taking photographs. I stopped caring about anything except the night and Lara and the precious hours we had together. I was becoming her thrall, her creature, bound to her by blood and love and obsession. I was losing myself.
It was a night in early December when she finally told me her decision. Snow had begun to fall, the first of the season, and the manor was transformed into something from a fairy tale. Beautiful, pristine, deadly. We stood on the highest balcony watching the snow blanket the forest below, and she turned to me with a resolution in her eyes that I had never seen before. "I've decided," she said. "I know what I must do." "What do you mean?" I asked, relief flooding through me. "You found a solution? A way for us to—" "I'm going to watch the sunrise," she said quietly. 3 days from now, the winter solstice. I'm going to watch the sun rise, and I'm going to end this. The world stopped. Everything stopped. My heart, my breath, my understanding of reality, everything simply ceased to function. "No," I finally managed to say. "No, Ilara, you can't." "I must," she said firmly. "Thomas, don't you see? This is the only way. You're dying, slowly but surely, and I'm the cause. You've given me so much life, so much hope, so much love, and in return, I'm draining you of yours. If this continues, you'll die, and I'll be left alone again, having killed the only person I've loved in 3 centuries.
I don't care, I said, grabbing her shoulders. I told you I don't care if I die. Let me die with you. Let me... No, she said, her voice breaking. You have a life to live, Thomas. A real life. A human life. You have dreams and talents and so much ahead of you. I won't let my existence destroy yours. I won't let this curse consume you too. Then turn me, I begged. Make me immortal. We can face eternity together. I told you I will never create another monster. I will never curse someone else with this existence. She cupped my face in her cool hands, her eyes swimming with tears.
My darling Thomas, the greatest gift I can give you is your life back, your mortality, your chance to live fully instead of existing endlessly. I don't want life without you, I said, tears streaming down my face. Ilara, please. 3 days, she said softly. We have 3 days. Let's not waste them arguing. Let's spend them loving each other. And then, on the solstice morning, I'll walk out onto the hill. I'll watch my first sunrise in 300 years, and I'll finally be free.
Those 3 days were agony and ecstasy in equal measure. We spent every moment together, barely sleeping, barely speaking, just holding each other as though we could stop time through sheer force of will. She told me stories of her human life, showed me portraits of her family, gave me glimpses of the young woman she had been before the curse. I photographed her obsessively, trying to capture every angle, every expression, every moment, as though I could trap her in images, preserve her in pixels, keep her somehow even after she was gone. On the last night, the night before the solstice, she gave me a letter. "Read this after," she said. "Not now, after." "After you're gone?" I said, the words like ashes in my mouth. "After I'm free," she corrected gently. "Thomas, I need you to understand this is not defeat. This is not suicide. This is choice. For 300 years, I had no choice. I existed because I was too afraid to stop existing. But you taught me courage. You taught me that love is worth any risk, any pain, any price. And now I'm choosing not death, but freedom. Not ending, but transformation. I'm choosing to stop being a monster and finally become just a memory." "A memory isn't enough," I said bitterly. "A memory is all any of us become eventually. You'll remember me, Thomas. You'll carry me with you. And someday, when you're old and gray and surrounded by children and grandchildren I'll never meet, you'll tell them the story of the woman you loved one winter in the mountains. And I'll live in that story. I'll be more alive in that tale than I ever was in this cursed flesh. We made love one final time, and she fed from me one final time, and I felt her draw strength from my blood, felt her prepare for what was coming. And then we simply held each other in the darkness, listening to each other breathe, her breath slow and unnecessary, mine fast and
The winter solstice dawn comes late in the Carpathian Mountains, but it comes inevitably. We walked up to the highest point of the hill, to a clearing where ancient stones marked some forgotten pagan ritual site, and we stood together looking east, waiting for the sun. Ilara wore a simple white dress, her black hair loose around her shoulders, her feet bare despite the snow. She looked more beautiful than I had ever seen her, serene, resolved, almost radiant with anticipation. I stood beside her in my coat and boots, shivering not from cold but from the desperate, futile hope that somehow, miraculously, this wouldn't happen, that she would change her mind, that the sun wouldn't rise. But the sun always rises. "Tell me again why you have to do this," I begged one last time. "Tell me why we can't just—" "Because I loved you," she said simply. "Because love means wanting the best for someone, even when it costs you everything. Because you deserve life, Thomas. Real life, not this half-existence in shadows." "You are my life," I said. "No," she said gently. "I was your awakening, your revelation, your glimpse of something beyond the ordinary. But I cannot be your life. Life is sunlight, Thomas. Life is growth and change and eventual decay. Life is everything I stopped being 300 years ago."
The first hint of light appeared on the horizon, just the faintest glow, barely distinguishable from the darkness. But I saw Ilara's entire body tense, saw something change in her posture, her breathing, her presence. "It's starting," she whispered, and there was wonder in her voice. "I can feel it, the sun. I'd forgotten what it feels like, even just the approaching promise of it." "Ilara," I said, my voice breaking completely. "Please." She turned to me then, and in the growing light, I saw that she was changing. Her skin was becoming even paler, almost translucent. Her eyes were growing larger, more luminous, and behind her shoulders I saw something beginning to emerge. The wings from the thumbnail description. Beautiful and terrible, made of something between flesh and shadow and smoke. "The transformation is incomplete," she explained, her voice strained. "I'm too weak to maintain full human form. I'm becoming what I truly am, something between human and monster, angel and demon, life and death." The wings unfurled fully. Massive, bat-like structures, veined with something that glowed faintly in the pre-dawn light. She looked like something from a medieval painting, a fallen angel, a beautiful demon, a creature of myth and nightmare and impossible beauty. "You are magnificent," I breathed.
"I'm an abomination," she said, but she smiled through her tears. "But I'm your abomination, and that makes it bearable." The light was growing stronger now, the sky shifting from black to deep blue to purple to pink. Dawn was coming, inevitable and implacable. Ilara turned to face it, spreading her wings wide as though to embrace what was coming. "I can see it," she whispered. "Colors I'd forgotten existed. The sky, Thomas, the sky is so beautiful. How did I forget how beautiful the sky is?" I stood behind her, my hands on her waist, feeling her body trembling with anticipation and fear and something like joy. Her skin was growing warm under my touch, actually warm for the first time since I'd known her. Life was coming back to her, just in time for that life to end. "Thomas," she said, her voice urgent, "kiss me one last time. Kiss me goodbye." I turned her to face me, and in the growing dawnlight I saw that her face was changing too. Her features were becoming more angular, more otherworldly. Her eyes were glowing with an inner light. Her lips were darkening to something like wine. She was beautiful and terrible and everything in between. I kissed her, and she was warm now, almost hot, as though the approaching sun was igniting something inside her. She kissed me back desperately, her hands tangling in my hair, her wings wrapping around us both like a cocoon. It was like kissing life itself, like kissing fire, like kissing the sun. And then she pulled away, turned back to the east, and the thirst-direct rays of sunlight broke over the horizon. The effect was immediate and horrifying and beautiful.
Ilara's skin began to glow, not metaphorically, but literally, as though she was made of alabaster lit from within. The glow intensified, spreading from where the sunlight touched her to her entire body, and she gasped, not in pain, but in something like relief, like release, like coming home after an impossibly long journey. "I'm warm," she whispered, wonder in her voice. "I'm so warm. I'd forgotten what warmth feels like." And then she began to burn. Smoke rose from her skin, thin wisps at first, then thicker, darker.
Her dress caught fire, the white fabric burning away to reveal skin that was cracking, fissuring, turning to something like volcanic glass. She spread her wings wider, and I saw them beginning to disintegrate, pieces breaking off and floating away like burning paper. "Laura!" I screamed, reaching for her. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't touch me. It's happening, Thomas. I'm burning. I'm finally burning." She turned to look at me one last time, and her face was already beginning to crumble. Pieces of her falling away like embers from a dying fire. But she was smiling, genuinely, beautifully smiling, and tears were streaming down her cheeks, evaporating instantly in the heat radiating from her body. "Thank you," she said, her voice becoming distant, echoing as though it was coming from very far away. "Thank you for giving me hope. Thank you for showing me love. Thank you for setting me free." "Laura, I love you," I said, sobbing. "I'll always love you." "I know," she whispered. "I love you too, forever, even after forever." The sun rose higher, and Alara began to come apart in earnest. Her body was dissolving into glowing embers, into ash and light and smoke. The wind caught the pieces of her, carrying them away in streams of gold and orange and red. She was breaking apart, dissipating, becoming air and light and memory. I tried to hold her, tried to catch the pieces of her, but there was nothing solid left to hold. She was ash in my hands, dust in the wind, light fading into morning. Her wings were gone, her body was gone, her face was gone. There was only light and warmth and the faint smell of jasmine, her scent, her essence, the last remaining piece of her existence. And then even that was gone. I stood alone on the hilltop, covered in fine ash that glowed faintly gold in the sunrise, my arms empty, my heart shattered. The sun continued to rise, beautiful and terrible and completely indifferent to my grief. The snow around me was knotted in a perfect circle where she had stood, and in the center of that circle there was nothing but scorched earth and a small pile of ash that sparkled like diamond dust.
I fell to my knees and sobbed, great, wrenching sobs that felt like they were tearing me apart from the inside. I had watched the woman I loved turn to ash. I had held her as she burned. I had kissed her goodbye at sunrise and then watched that same sunrise destroy her. The villagers found me hours later, still kneeling in the melted snow, still covered in ash, still broken. They carried me back down the hill, put me to bed, fed me soup and strong brandy, and said prayers over me in their ancient language. The innkeeper's wife sat with me, holding my hand, weeping for me even though she had warned me, even though she had told me this would happen. I stayed in St. George for another week, moving through the days like a ghost. On the fourth day, I finally remembered the letter Alar had given me. I opened it with shaking hands and read,
My dearest Thomas, if you're reading this, then I am gone, and you are still here, and my final wish has come true. You are alive, my darling. You're free. You have your whole life ahead of you, unburdened by my curse. I know you're in pain right now. I know you think you'll never recover from this, that you'll carry this grief forever like a stone in your chest. And perhaps you will, in some way. But Thomas, I need you to understand. Grief is proof of love. Pain is evidence that what we had was real.
If you didn't hurt, it would mean we didn't matter. So let yourself hurt, let yourself grieve, let yourself rage at the unfairness of a world where love and death are so closely intertwined. But then eventually, when you're ready, live. Live fully, completely, voraciously, fall in love again, create beautiful things, see the world, have children, grow old, do all the things I could never do. And as you live, carry me with you, not as a burden, but as a gift. Let our story be a reminder that love is worth any cost, that beauty is worth any pain, that connection is worth any risk. I lived for 300 years, Thomas, but I wasn't alive until I met you. Those few weeks with you are worth more than all the centuries that came before. You gave me the courage to choose freedom over fear, transformation over stagnation, love over mere existence. You gave me the most precious gift anyone has ever given me. You gave me an ending. So don't mourn me as someone who died. Celebrate me as someone who finally got to live, if only for a little while, if only at the very end. I'll wait for you, my love. Where other souls go when they leave their bodies behind, I'll be there, and I'll be waiting. And when your time comes, after a long, full, beautiful life, I'll be the first thing.
I left Sunjers 2 days later, carrying nothing but my camera, my memories, and a small vial filled with ash that sparkled like gold dust in sunlight. I traveled south, then west, then home to Seattle. I returned to my life, my career, my world, but I was not the same person who had left it. I threw myself into my photography with a fervor that bordered on obsession. I captured beauty wherever I found it, in sunrises and human faces, in city streets and mountain peaks, in the fleeting moments that exist for just a heartbeat before vanishing forever. My work changed. Critics said it had depth now, emotion, a quality of urgent melancholy that made viewers feel both the joy and tragedy of existence in a single image. I had exhibitions in New York, Paris, Tokyo. I won awards. I made money. I became successful in all the ways I had dreamed of being successful. But none of it felt quite real. None of it mattered the way those few weeks with Laura had mattered. I tried to fall in love again. I dated, had relationships, even got engaged once. But I could never quite commit fully, could never quite give all of myself, because part of me was still standing on that hilltop at sunrise, watching the woman I loved turn to ash and light. It wasn't until I was 35, nearly a decade after Ilara's death, that I finally met someone who understood. Her name was Sarah. She was a hospice nurse, and she had lost her husband to cancer 3 years prior. We met at a gallery showing of my work. She stood in front of a photograph I'd taken of sunrise over the Carpathian Mountains, and I watched tears stream down her face. "It's beautiful and terrible at the same time," she said when she noticed me watching. "It looks like hope and grief had a baby." "That's exactly what it is," I said.
We talked for hours that night, and for the first time since Ilara, I told someone the whole story. I expected disbelief, dismissal, concern for my mental health. Instead, Sarah just nodded and said, "Love is like that sometimes. Too big for the world to hold, too beautiful to last, too important to forget." We became friends first, then lovers, then partners.
I told her from the beginning that part of my heart would always belong to a woman who turned to ash at sunrise, and she accepted that with a grace that still amazes me. She said her heart still belonged partly to her dead husband, so we were even. We were two wounded people who had loved and lost, choosing to love again despite knowing the cost. Sarah and I buried when I was 37. We had 2 children. A daughter we named Elena, close enough to Ilara to honor her, different enough to let her be her own person, and a son we named James after Sarah's late husband. I taught my children to love sunrise, to chase beauty, to hold nothing back when it comes to love. I told them, when they were old enough to understand, about the woman I'd loved one winter in the mountains. I showed them her photograph. I explained that love is bigger than death, that grief is just love with nowhere to go, that the heart's capacity for both joy and sorrow is what makes us human. My daughter became a doctor. My son became a poet. Both of them fell in love, married, gave me grandchildren. I photographed everything. Weddings and birthdays, first steps and graduations, the ordinary, beautiful moments that make up a life. I grew older, grayer, slower. My hands developed arthritis that made it hard to hold a camera. My eyes weakened. My hair turned white. But I lived. God, how I lived. I squeezed joy from every moment, found beauty in every sunrise, loved fiercely and without reservation. I did exactly what Ilara had asked me to do. I lived for both of us.
I am 74 years old now. Sarah and I are sitting on the porch of our house in Washington, watching the sunrise over Puget Sound. My hands shake with age, but I can still hold her hand, can still feel the warmth of her skin, the steady beat of her pulse. She has been diagnosed with cancer, stage 4, untreatable. The doctors give her 6 months, maybe less. I'm going to miss this, she says quietly, watching the sky turn from black to blue to pink to gold. Sunrises, your hand in mine, the sound of the grandchildren laughing in the next room. I'll miss you, I say, my voice breaking despite nearly 4 decades of marriage. Despite knowing this was always coming, I'll miss you every day. I know, she says, but you'll be okay. You've done this before. You know how to survive grief. I know how to carry it, I correct. That's different from surviving it. She squeezes my hand. Tell me again, about her, about Ilara. So I do. I tell her the whole story one more time. The manor on the hill, the woman with violet gray eyes, the 6 weeks of impossible love, the sunrise that took everything and gave nothing back. Sarah has heard the story 100 times, but she never tires of it. She says it's a love story and a ghost story and a fairy tale, all rolled into one, and that every time I tell it, she falls more in love with both me and the memory of the woman I loved before her. You'll see her again, Sarah says when I finish. When it's your time, you'll see her again, and she'll be waiting in sunlight, just like she promised. I'll see you too, I say. Both of you. Maybe you'll be friends. Sarah laughs, and it turns into a cough, but when she recovers, she's smiling. Oh, we'll be friends. We'll compare notes about how stubborn you are, how you never take care of yourself, how you...
We sit in silence watching the sun rise fully, and I think about Ilara standing on that hilltop, spreading her wings, turning her face to the light. I think about how she burned, how she transformed from curse to freedom, from existence to peace, from monster to memory. I think about how she gave me my life back, how she loved me enough to let me go, how she waited in whatever comes after, so that I could live in whatever comes before. And I think about Sarah, who will soon make her own transformation, her own journey from this world to whatever waits beyond, who loves me enough to want me to keep living even after she's gone, who understands that love doesn't end just because bodies fail. Thank you, I say to Sarah, squeezing her hand, for understanding, for accepting that I loved someone before you, for not being jealous of a ghost. She's not a ghost, she's part of your story. And I love every part of your story, Thomas. Even the sad parts, especially the sad parts. They're what made you who you are. The sun is fully risen now, painting our porch in shades of gold and amber. I look at my wife, my beautiful, dying, vital, alive wife, and I see echoes of Ilara in her face. Not because they look alike, but because they both loved me enough to face death without flinching, to accept transformation without fear, to believe that love is bigger than the physical forms that temporarily contain it. Sarah closes her eyes, her face peaceful in the morning light. And for just a moment, I see something.
We're all, in the end, just love, wearing flesh for a little while. And when the flesh fails, the love remains. Always the love remains.
I am 83 years old when my time finally comes. It's a heart attack, sudden and massive, in the middle of photographing a sunrise. Because, of course it is, because the universe has a sense of poetic symmetry. Because all stories eventually curve back to their beginnings. The last thing I see with earthly eyes is the sun breaking over the horizon, painting the sky in colors I have spent a lifetime trying to capture and never quite succeeded. The last thing I hear is my daughter's voice calling my name. The last thing I feel is my son's hand gripping mine. And then I'm gone. Or perhaps I'm just beginning. I open my eyes, and I'm standing on a hilltop in a clearing marked by ancient stones, under a sky that's permanently caught in that perfect moment between night and day. The air smells like jasmine and fresh snow. The light is golden and soft and eternal. And standing before me, backlit by impossible sunlight, is Ilara. She's exactly as I remember her. 20 years old, black hair loose around her shoulders, wearing a simple white dress.
Hello, Ilara, I say, and I'm young again too, I realize. Not 26, but some ageless version of myself, the essential me beneath all the years and grief and experience. I waited, she says, stepping closer, just like I promised. I lived, I say, just like you asked. I know, she says, close enough to touch now. I watched every sunrise, every photograph, every moment of beauty and pain and love. I was there, Thomas. I was always there. She reaches up and touches my face, and her hand is warm. Actually, genuinely, miraculously warm. Real warmth, not the simulation of it. Life, not the memory of life. Are you ready? She asks. For whatever comes next? I look at her, then back at Sarah, who nods encouragingly. And I realize that this is not an ending at all. This is just another transformation, another sunrise, another beginning. I'm ready, I say. I've been ready since the moment I watched you turn to ash and light. I've just been taking a long way here. Ilara smiles, and it's the most beautiful thing.
In memory of all those who have loved enough to let go, grieved enough to grow,
and lived enough to leave beautiful stories behind. May we all face our final sunrises with courage, grace, and wings unfurled.